Let's crack open a beer and share some thoughts.
It's one of the great trio of superheroes, I feel. You got Super Ted, Banana Man, and Batfink. Those are the big three as far as I'm concerned.
Maybe Danger Mouse instead of Batfink.
Yeah, okay.
Let's be honest.
I would have to slot in Danger Mouse instead of Batfink.
Deputy Dog?
No. Mighty Mouse?
No, Danger
Oh no,
Mouse.
Definitely not.
Danger
No.
Mouse.
Danger Mouse?
Finger
Danger
Mouse.
because it was hilarious with
Finger Mouse.
Jason and Terry Scott.
Stiletto.
It's quite possible that we've already lost a percentage of our listeners.
I have my own podcast and I'm well used to that.
We've already gone full-on geek
Yes.
tonight, which is all down to you this week.
What, the geek bit? That's a bit harsh, Steve.
The whole show is down to you tonight. So right now, I'm just going to sit back and let you take
You're
it.
going to sit back and drink, are you?
There you go, mate.
Tonight's show is referencing go-to beers. The reason for that, because of a blog I did recently, and but just instead of just me and Steve chatting about it, I thought I'd invite someone from another podcast I listen to. It's a Doctor Who related podcast.
God help you all.
Yes, bit more geekery thrown in.
Hence why I'm just sitting back drinking beer tonight.
In your Flash t-shirt.
So the third voice you can hear is a guy called John West, and I shall let him introduce himself from there.
Good evening. Hi. So I'm John West, and I'm I'm the third wheel of a Doctor Who podcast called I'll Explain Later. I guess I'm here as well because I have Hopinions.
Oh, we like that.
Yeah.
We like someone on brand.
On brand.
Guests that can really
On brand.
Yeah, get on brand and get with it.
Yeah.
But I do have
Read
something.
the memo.
I think that's probably the best pronounced Hopinions we've ever had. As
Yeah.
well.
You've got to aspirate the H, I feel.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but I do have a beery past, which I suppose we'll get into later. But I'm an erstwhile contributor to Staunch's beer blog, and I did have my own mercurially named podcast, oddly named podcast, Jesus John blog back in the day, 2009 to 2011. It was named after an academic institution I attended. So yes, I have a bit of a beer past.
Okay, well, do you want to share a bit of your beer journey with us? People know ours, so they're bored with our one.
Yeah,
Well-
we don't need to do that effort.
So I'm 34 years old, and I guess basically I first was going into pubs when I was about 15, 16, and I feel like there's this big thing about millennials at the moment. Everyone's focused on what millennials want, and those of us born in the early 80s, we're sort of caught between two stools. We're neither Generation X, but we're not quite the millennial generation. And I feel that perennial, I call it, bit between...
Loving the words.
Yeah.
I am.
Are you looking them up yet?
No.
Okay.
Don't look up. Don't look up.
Again, let me just reference. Sitting back, drinking beer.
Okay, doing fuck all.
Don't look up perineum.
I'm going to read it.
Don't.
Okay?
Don't look up perineum. You won't like it. But that perennial, that sort of early 80s bit, I think those of us born in that generation were really the last people who could go to the pub underage, look the publican in the eye, and say, "A pint of London Pride, please," and still get served without being asked for ID. So when I was 15, 16, and this was down in Kent, West Kent. I was a big fan of London Pride, and especially down in West Kent. I went to school in West Kent.
Well, they had London Pride at your school. Brilliant.
Round the corner.
In a minute, we'll stop interrupting him and just let him talk.
But I used to go. I had a pal.
We don't do it with anyone else.
I had a pal from Tunbridge Wells, and he took me down to the pubs in Tunbridge Wells, and there I got drinking London Pride and Harvey's Best. If you ordered cask beer, you were more likely to get served because they just went, "You might look like a kid, but anyone ordering cask bitter is clearly not trouble." It's really interesting if you think back to those times when I was living in Cambridge, 2001 through 2009-10. We saw the beginnings of Brewdog. A lot of cask Brewdog came through the pumps in those days.
I never tried cask Brewdog.
Oh, cask Punk IPA was a real thing of
Did you,
beauty.
Steve?
I never tried the Scottish brewery on cask, no.
Cask Punk in its original...
Did you not brief him?
No. That was the one bit I wasn't expecting.
Okay.
Cask Brewdog Punk IPA, 6.1% in its original iteration. I remember getting a text from my mate Rod Thomas, a big burly guy who looks like Bluto out of Popeye. And he said...
Picture that there.
Yeah.
He said, I got a text from him saying, Brewdog Punk IPA is on cask, and this must have been 2008. I rushed down there, and it was nectar. But, I'm thinking back then of beers like, exciting beer back in 2001 through 2005, 2007. You're talking Woodford's Wherry or Dark Star Hophead or, even Bateman's XXB or something, or Triple XB. Some of the beers that
You're listing beers which Steve loves right now.
Oh, no.
I can tell.
No.
Tell.
But I'm just saying that what counted as something different across the bar, it's extraordinary, the rate of change. So I came to London in 2010. There must have been 6. I mean, certainly in 2006 there were like 6 or 7 breweries in London.
No, there weren't many. I mean, Young's had already moved out. You had Fuller's, Meantime, Sandbrooks.
0 Degrees you have to count in there as well.
Up at Blackheath.
Yeah.
So, half a dozen tops.
Easy. Not many more than that.
And we're 7 years on.
Yeah. By the time, and by 2010, not much had changed. 2 or 3 years later, you're talking Colonel had opened, Pressure Drop Arrive, various others. And the explosion has got to the point now. I mean, here we sit in 2017. There must be 80 odd breweries in London. I'm well unable at this point to keep up with everything that's open. And at this point, I think this is true of the wider craft, for want of a better term.
He's mentioned the C word. No, we did tell him about that. We said, no, you can't say the C word.
This is the last time you get to invite a guest, because you need to brief these people on things they can't say. Basically,
I said, don't use the C word.
Oh, yeah, but he's already thrown in the Scottish brewery as well.
Yeah, I did forget that one.
For want of a better term, but that explosion of breweries. I mean, I very much operate on the same terms as, say, as a blogger I like a lot, Tandleman, who's rather more of a cask man. I'm an ecumenical drinker. I like cask, keg, bottle. My heart's always with cask. But he always talks about the circle of trust.
Yeah, he does.
The breweries that are within that circle of trust, and you need to earn that trust. And that's where I am with London breweries at the moment. Because there's just so many of them. It's difficult to keep up. And I guess, today's main theme is go-to beers, and that fits with that theme of a circle of trust. What's in that?
It's really interesting that you say that, actually, because, and we'll come on to it, that there were a lot of comments that came in about this week's poll where people were like, I'm just fed up trying new crap beer from breweries that I simply don't trust.
Yeah.
So it's something that
we can get into that a bit more, can't we?
We'll come back to that. Absolutely, yeah. We've not spoken about beer yet.
No, that's we haven't.
And we're
We've spoken about me a lot though, and I'm very happy about that. That's worked for me.
Not so much. Even though I'm taking a back seat tonight. Not so much.
Rather a backseat driver, if you ask me. Yeah, but
so we were drinking a beer.
The Whitstable Pale Ale, 3.5%.
We are in a Shepherd Neame pub, which, given my Kentish background, was a brave choice.
We arranged it especially for you.
Yeah,
we are, and it's probably. I'm going to say this up front now. We're really grateful to Shepherd Neame as well for sorting out a room for us tonight.
Yep.
Not only the room, but they've also given us all the beers on tap as well. So the beers that we're drinking tonight are free.
So firstly, thank you very much.
Absolutely, thanks for that, and particularly thanks to John Humphreys for sorting that for us, and to the manager Mike at the Hoop and Grapes
near Farringdon, below the Holborn Viaduct.
It's a good beer guide listed pub.
It is, and
it's very atmospheric. It's got the whole Dickensian thing.
As always, that's not going to affect the views that we have on the beers. No.
I've got to say that the cask pale suffers, I think, from a lot of Shep's beer. Has Green King beer, cask beer, with the exception of their mild, which I think is great.
That's it. He's now mentioned the Holy Trinity or the Unholy Trinity in the first 20 minutes of the podcast.
Thank you and good night. Join us again for.
I'm going.
No, so
Steve's going to go and eat crisps.
So Green King.
That for anyone who's confused, is Steve going? He's gone.
He's genuinely gone.
He's genuinely gone. Which means we can drink his beer.
Oh, thank God.
That's not too bad, is it?
But no, seriously though, they make a good mild, and that's the only good thing they do. And their beer is no, Green King.
Oh,
with Sheps, I think Sheps and Green King often get bracketed as sort of heritage breweries that aren't much loved by the C Arati.
yes.
And I think that's a bit unfair to both of them because they both brew a couple of good beers. In the case of GK,
Isn't there a phrase about faint, damning praise there?
the mild is really world class. Everything else is horrible. In the case of Sheps, I think on form, Master Brew, their session bitter,
It's excellent.
it's like being catapulted through a hedgerow. It's just got that vegetal bitterness and
Yeah, but it's well done.
Oh God,
Is it 4%?
yeah. It's not.
They always have it on the old Dr. Butler's head near me at work.
But a lot of Shep's cask feels like a good beer that's sort of past its best, even when on good form. And I fear that the Whitstable Bay cask falls into that bracket. But the Whitstable Bay lager that we had earlier
It was lovely.
genuinely very good.
I thought it was
very
excellent.
clean, quite
I mean,
aromatic.
how many pints did you try, Steve, just to make sure?
3 pints just to make sure it was tasting okay.
Yeah,
and
see?
it was tasting spot on.
Every pint.
Yeah, but again, and we've had this a few times in the past. Whitstable Bay is supposed to be like Sheps.
Go on, Steve. Come on. Come on. You can say it.
And this is just for Ruth. This is. Here comes the audible sigh. It's their craft arm.
Hey!
Steve's back in the room.
We're very proud of you.
We are.
Yeah, Sydney's supposed to be, because they've got a range of the Whitstable Bay, haven't they? It's different pump clip,
It is
slightly
very-
different brands.
It's in
different
500ml clear glass bottles. So we've moved on to the next beer.
Yeah,
Thank
which
God.
is one of their retro ranges, isn't it?
This is what we're going to be doing for the rest of the evening. Is the Shepherd Neame kind of this retro range?
That's where they've dug back into the archives, isn't it?
Yeah. So this is the first one up is the Brilliant Ale, which is a 5.6% golden beer for all intents and purposes.
Which is why it's got the word brilliant, isn't it?
The
word
labels,
brilliant
the
is-
labels for these, it has to be said, are really
Bang on.
beautiful.
Yeah, I think they're brilliant. It was the IPA that I first found, which will be next up, but I think the word brilliant is there because of the sunshine bit rather than it saying it's brilliant, wasn't it?
I think so.
So that's the history behind it.
What do we think of the nose?
It's quite fruity, actually.
Rotting fruit, though, don't you think?
No,
that's harsh.
just a little bit of summer fruits in there, just a hint.
Yeah, I don't think it's not a
I'm getting a bit of Marmite.
Marmite, really.
Did you get the dirty glass?
No, I'm not convinced. It's quite clean on the palate, but it does sit a bit sweet.
What have you guys been up to recently, beer-wise? So we're in a Sheps pub. We'll talk about Sheps as we go through the evening anyway, the go-to beer scene. What have you been up to, Steve?
I went to Manchester
Beer week.
for the end of the beer week.
How did it go?
It was good. It was very good. I went to. People would have heard by now the short show that we put out, or the 3 short episodes that we put out this week.
Of course they would have.
Of the various interviews that I did throughout the week. But I started off my 4 days in Manchester with a Galway Bay tap takeover.
Dangerous for you.
Very dangerous, considering I started off on their session IPA and then jumped straight to a Foam and Fury and then hit 200 fathoms.
There was nothing in between.
No.
So what was that? Althea,
Yeah.
Foam and Fury, 200 fathoms.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank you very much.
I'm fairly certain there's a more expanded range of the Galway Bay.
There is much more of the Galway Bay expanded range, but I then on the Thursday night I then caught up with Mark Johnson and we had a few beers in town as well. He took me to a few places where we had differing views on.
Yes,
the
so I
quality
noticed.
of the beer.
So I noticed on Twitter.
Yeah.
It was all your fault.
Apparently it was all my fault. It was nothing to do with
You
the
picked
fact
the wrong
that
beers in the wrong places.
bars were just serving bad beers.
Yeah.
Which I'm sure Mark will continue to argue about this with me. And then on Friday I went to the Peel Crow Summer Beer thing for the first session of that. And I've got to say, I'm going to kind of wrap this up in one go with the Peel Crow Summer Beer thing. They almost nailed it as far as a beer festival was concerned. So, and this lends itself a little bit to what Roland was saying on last week's Stephen Rowland's Beer podcast. about beer festivals not having session times. So you got a wristband and you were in for the day. You could leave and you could come back.
Spot on.
The way it was set up, they had the Pilcrow bar was where it always is in its location.
For the listeners, Steve is drawing a diagram in the air for us with his arms stretched out.
Okay, so you had the Pilcrow bar, and then the square outside the bar there was a marquee, and in the marquee were all the festival beers, and you could not get into the marquee without a wristband. You could go to the pub if you didn't have a wristband, but you couldn't get into the festival.
Did you pay for the wristband to get into the festival bit?
That was your ticket,
right?
To get in, and if you bought in advance, you got a token as well.
And you could come in and out as you want.
You could go in and out as you want, and you could go away and you could come back. And if you had the coloured wristband for that day, you were there until the session finished.
Duration.
Yeah.
Sounds like a really good setup.
It was
a lot of people could learn from that.
The setup was perfect. 10 tokens for 20 quid, so £2 a token.
I'm a big fan of the token beer festival.
So that and
depends what the token gets you. So
no, I agree. But just in terms of the simplicity at the bar, ordering,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So every beer served in a third, regardless of its ABV. So, and I literally went.
I've
from one
lost
end
interest
of the
now.
scale to the other. So
which way did you start?
I went from 3.8%.
Okay. I thought you were going to start off by saying you went for 10 and worked your way down.
Nearly. There was a slight FOMO moment where somebody said you really need to drink the On Apollo barrel aged anagram blueberry cheesecake stout at 14% before it goes.
Okay.
So then I did that mid afternoon.
But if you'd done that straight away, that would have ruined the first half a dozen beers.
Absolutely, because the flavours on it were exactly what it said.
That does sound like a C bomb.
It was an amazing beer though. It was
it?
uber craft, but it did everything it said on the tin.
But you started off with Sonoma.
Yeah.
Cracking.
Started off on the low beers.
But Sonoma on good
trying
form.
to start. Sonoma was. I had it a couple of times over the weekend, and it was cracking on every occasion. It always is. Because it's, I will still maintain, and I've said it before, I'm going to say it again, that for its ABV, it's the best beer of that style in the UK right now.
I think it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant it is.
There is not a better pale ale at 3.8% in the UK right now. It really isn't. And I would challenge anyone to come at me.
I think John might be offering a challenge, but we'll come to that.
So yeah.
Maybe not at 3.8%, but...
So that was nice, and the Pilcrow bar itself, you could, as a non-festival goer, you could still go into the bar and buy the beers. They did have one wall of kegs that were part of the festival though as well. So punters could buy those, but if you had festival tokens, you could also get one as a...
Was it called the Wall of Keg?
It wasn't called the Wall of Keg.
There should have been.
But it should
That's a missed opportunity. That's a missed opportunity.
That was a missed opportunity.
It should have been.
Maybe Manchester Beer Week 2018 should say Wall of Keg.
Absolutely.
Wall of Keg, World of Pub.
Really liked the way they set the bars up as well. So the bars were by style rather than by brewery or anything
textbook.
else.
Yeah.
So you had a session bar, you had two bars that were hoppy and hoppier, you had sour and fruit, and then you had other, which was where anything that didn't fit into.
Okay, so
can I ask you a really geeky question? Within the bars, how was it organised by brewery? So, like, if you're in the hoppy bar,
it was literally just 10 breweries that were listed.
But then was it alphabetical?
No. And then they had, within each bar, they had pre-released what beers were going to be on. So you had on first, up next, and then.
Oh, that is good.
I'm going to bring you back to your opening sentence. Almost.
The couple of things for me that let it down were the beers didn't go quick enough in terms of being replaced. So I was in on Friday and Saturday.
Was that because you were doing water sometimes?
I was doing beer, water.
It's his own fault.
It wasn't me just drinking everything.
They hand banked it then. Hand banked on that.
But the beers didn't, and I think it was down to ticket sales. The beers just didn't go as quick as they expected. So when I got there on the Saturday, it was the same selection of beers.
The thing is, next year, the Pilcrow, if they do the Pilcrow thing again, that'll be more popular again.
It will be. It will be. And they said they hadn't. And you can listen to this in the interview that we did with them earlier on this week. Becky was saying that they hadn't sold out, but they didn't want to sell out because they wanted to be able to sell tickets on the door.
Yeah.
So if somebody was walking past, they could just go, "What's going on here? Can I come in and
which I think is brilliant. There should always be a percentage of those tickets.
So
totally.
I can't blame them for the fact that the beers weren't selling quick enough. You know, because by the time I left on Saturday afternoon, every bar had a queue.
Is this the first time they've done it?
It is. It is.
They'll learn, I think, because it sounds like a pretty good setup.
And also
generally.
more people come.
Yeah.
Second thing was there was no water.
Oh.
So you had to buy it from the bar.
No.
Hang on, buy?
Bottle.
You had to buy it.
Or they would fill up an empty bottle from their tap, but there was no obvious place to get water.
Fail.
And the third one was.
For that reason alone, I'm out.
This is the typical, you know, family fortunes. Third big X. Music got too loud.
Oh,
As the day went.
What was the music, out of interest?
It was just DJs, just rotating DJs.
Oh, we're talking deep house.
I don't know. It was just too
electronica.
Loud. But you know, you can't take that away from what they've set up there, because it was a fantastic environment. You've got this marquee, which is essentially a beer festival. The only way you get into the marquee is with the wristband, and the only way you buy beers once you're in the marquee is with tokens. And that's how it was.
So I would say
food offering was great. The environment was great.
90% there.
90%, yeah. But hopefully they'll learn from that next year. So that was my Friday and Saturday. If Friday wasn't enough, I then went from the Peel Crow to the Buxton tap takeover.
Yeah, I was afraid you might mention this.
I'm sorry, but I've got to. And if,
I saw you tweeted a picture of was it Axe Edge cask versus Axe Edge keg?
yeah.
That I want to know about, because I have had both, but never side by side.
It's the first time I've had them side, and it's the first time I've ever seen them in a bar at the same time.
So come on,
as well.
Let us know.
Cask Axe Edge has got a deeper flavour to it. It's a lot smoother.
Is it the same percentage?
I believe so, yeah.
It's the same beer. I mean, it basically
beer.
is, right?
Because a lot of the time they.
Yeah.
No, you're absolutely right. But I really do think on this occasion it is the same beer. More or less. Yeah.
Whereas the keg version is still crisp and fresh, and it's everything that you want in a West Coast IPA.
And just to add a little bit, Steve's smiling when he's talking about the keg bit there.
I am.
He couldn't help a grin.
I would say
his hop grin came across his face.
I'm smiling more about what's to come next.
I just very quickly interject. Sorry, but I have found that I love the keg and I love the cask, but I've actually always liked it best out of the bottle. I found it totally most compelling out of the bottle.
The best I've ever tasted it is from the tap house in Buxton.
Oh well, yeah.
Which is where it's at its absolute best.
And I will agree with that.
So I got in there and I went to the bar and I bought those two beers and obviously took a picture of them.
Yeah.
What you didn't see in that picture was the massive FOMO moment I had while I was at the bar, because I thought the Guatemalan extra coffee porter was going to sell out, so I also bought a third of that while I was buying the two Axe Edges so that I could have it, so that I actually had it to come back to. Somebody went to the bar and bought a round of the ice cream beers that were also on cask as well, and there was apparently one point where I had 5 beers in front of me and people were like, he's never going to get through those, and by all accounts I disappeared, leaving most of them undrunk.
Had you touched them though?
I'd drunk enough of them to be able to check them in on Untapped.
Okay, so
that's all that matters.
No sips.
No sips. No sips. They were proper tasters. So that was great. And then just to finish my Manchester beer adventure, I went to the Homebrew Expo at Beer Nouveau on Sunday. Was expecting just to go in to try just a few of the beers that was on offer. Walked in and Steve said, "Would you like to judge?" I was umming and ahhing, was volunteered to judge, and then was told I had to try 21 beers. So that then became a very interesting afternoon.
I think we're quite happy to still see you here, Steve.
And I'm still here, and I'm still talking.
Yeah.
Because there was a certain,
and with glass in hand as well.
certain reservation to my drinking this weekend.
Yeah,
But,
very well done. Very well done. It sounds like a cracking weekend, though.
When I first met Will from Galway Bay, I met him in Paul Street Beer House, and he was going through some of the beers, and he was having a bit of a tough time with some of them. And he was like, "Recommend me something." And Track Sonoma was on. I was like, "Get a pint of that." And he drank it, and he was like, "That is fucking incredible."
Oh, that is.
And it's like when you know when you have that moment where you've recommended the beer to a head brewer of a brewery that you adore,
Yeah.
and he loves the beer that you've recommended.
But that beer is fully.
Yeah. I was like, yes, come on.
That beer arrived fully realised.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I've never seen anyone have a bad word about it.
No.
Have you not had it yet?
Oh, no, we've had it,
Yeah.
We did Cask and Keg when we were in Manchester.
Oh,
didn't we?
cool.
So in summary, anyway, just to try and move this on a little bit, Manchester Beer Week, for me, I only did the last 4 days, but from what I saw from the rest of it, was absolutely amazing. And you've probably picked up that we're involved next year in a challenge
apparently so, yes.
against Beernomicon. So it's Hopinions versus Beernomicon on a pub crawl stroke quiz night, and we have to take their crown.
Yeah, so I did notice the gauntlet had been laid down and you had accepted on our behalf.
I think it was laid down at the moment where I decided I was going to sit at the table that said this is reserved for Beernomicon to record, and I sat at their table to do all of my recordings. and then when they tried to come over, I was telling them to go away. But you can hear all of that in the shows, in
the upcoming shows,
in the mini shows, the past shows now as this is released.
Yes.
Go back and listen to the 3 short interviews I did as part of Manchester Beer Week, because each of them brings a little something different to what the week was about.
It's good to hear you did a bit of work while you were there, Steve.
Well, you made me.
Yeah, I did mention it, didn't I?
You did. And to be fair, I had it all done by 2 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. I was like, party!
I'm done.
Yeah. So while I was pissing it up in Manchester, you were drinking lots of lager in
Oh yeah,
Germany.
I was drinking lots of Kolsch. I went to Cologne and Dusseldorf for a couple of days and drank, well, what would be classed as the go-to beers in Cologne and Dusseldorf, Kolsch and Altbier.
Still desperately trying to get this thing back onto topic.
Onto go-to beers, yeah. And so I won't say too much about it because there's not too much you can say about Kolsch and Altbiers anyway. But what I will say is that we found a couple of craft places, one in Cologne, and they had 6 out of the 14 taps had Kernel on.
Really?
Which I very rarely find in London.
Win.
Yeah. Unfortunately, none of them had the IPA. Because otherwise,
have any IPA?
No Kernel IPA. Because otherwise, they just would have stayed there the whole night.
I always prefer the Kernel Pales to the Kernel IPAs anyway.
Oh no, the IPA, the 6.7 we had recently, but lovely place. Only been open since November. It's still gaining a bit of traction as well. It's a hard market to break in those parts of Germany.
Yeah, definitely.
They're very entrenched in their regional beers. Went to Dusseldorf on the Sunday after the Tour de France had left. Shit weather this weekend while we were there, while you guys had nice weather here.
Why did you go after it had left?
Because it was packed beforehand.
Okay.
And we'd been out.
So I've never been to Dusseldorf. I only really know Schlosser Alt, so there must be some better Alts than that.
Yeah, well, Schlosser's okay, but it's not the best one.
Yeah. No, it is okay, but it's, yeah.
But I mean, the thing with Altbiers, it's very much can be a very malty, sweet, almost English bitter type of feel.
I think we've experienced that a couple of times
Yeah.
in bottle share, haven't we?
Not quite as musty as those ones though. But we did have a couple of nice ones, but we managed to again stumble on a craft beer place which I heard about, but until the weekend before last was always closed on a Sunday, and it was open. Looked at the tap list and saw the beer I was going to have last. So the Kentucky Breakfast Stout was on tap. Nice. So I thought, okay, I'll introduce.
That was this year's version of it as well.
Yeah, 2017. So I said right. So I told my brothers this is what we're finishing on, and then you can work towards it. So I let them choose their own beers before that, but said that's what we're finishing on. And that got from my youngest brother. He doesn't like spirits at all. Bit of a mixed response because you get that really heavy
bourbon
nose straight away.
Yeah.
There's no hiding it.
So if you like bourbon, it's perfect.
Yeah. If you're a bit allergic to it, you get it straight away. So if it's a flavour you don't like or an aroma you don't like, you get it straight away, don't you? Paul is quite partial to whiskey. The other brother, the one who lives in Cologne, and he thought, oh yeah, this does smell nice. By the end of it though, they both really enjoyed it. Unfortunately, we were still drinking after that. That was at 7 o'clock. Because they were closing at 7 o'clock, unfortunately for us.
Seriously?
We stayed there.
Oh, it was Sunday.
But they're also playing about with does Sunday work for them? So they're just doing 12 till 7 on Sunday. It was. And then we went back into Cologne and watched Germany win football again, and drank more Kolsch. But it was a nice weekend. Not too heavy, not quite the wide variety of beers that you tried, Steve. But yeah, did manage to get a bit of craft in there. Bit of the C word.
Nicely done.
Yeah. Any favourites for you over the last couple of days?
Well, actually, do you know, I've had a couple of beer adventures the last couple of months. I was delighted to hear you mention Galway Bay, Steve. I was in Dublin just a few weeks ago, and I went to the Black Sheep, which is near O'Connell Street.
We haven't been to that one, have we? We've
Might have done. I might have been there.
I've been to Brewdock and their beer market. I haven't been to Black Sheep.
It's between Parnell Street, O'Connell Street, that kind of area, north of the Liffey. It's an extraordinary pub, and the beers are, as I'm sure you are well aware, absolutely stunning. And the cask as well, as something of a cask
I didn't try that cask.
fan.
We struggled to find Irish cars, didn't we? Yeah.
No, if you're in town, the Black Sheep certainly has terrific cask, and they do it very well. So we were delighted to be there. But I must confess, with all due respect to Galway Brewery, my find from Dublin was the White Hag Brewery. And I've got to say, big thank you to the Beer Nut, blogger and Twitter fellow. Yeah. He was the one who said we should try that out. And the Little Fawn Session IPA, just exceptional. 3.8%, got the same sort of flavour profile as say Beavertown Neck Oil, but I think it's a much better beer. Real clarity in the flavours, real layering of it. It's got a haze, but you can still see through it, and it's just gorgeous. Really, really enjoyed that, and their IPA as well. Knockout, absolutely knockout. Terrific brewery.
Where was their bar?
So they're in Sligo, but we had them in the now I need to find it. But I think we had them in...
They're on in quite a lot of places, aren't they?
Yeah, lots of places in Dublin. We certainly found them in...
I don't suppose they're still doing the coffee nitro stout.
I think that's all gone.
That I don't remember.
Apart from the bottle that I've got in my cellar.
But no, they were in the Buck's Head. Is it the Buck's Head in Dublin?
Might be. Not heard of that one. We haven't tried them all.
God.
I've been to Dublin a lot of times, and I've been very drunk every time I've been there. So
we spent the bulk of the waking hours at the beer festival last time.
We did. Yeah, we got a little bit institutionalised.
The Stag's Head. I do apologise. The Stag's Head, Dublin.
Okay.
Which, by the way, has the best staff of any pub we went to, and that's very close to the sort of Temple Bar strip.
Final thoughts on the beer?
Well, it's gone.
Yeah.
I enjoed it.
I enjoyed it.
It's very easy.
I found it very easy to drink.
It's very easy to drink.
Yeah. Far from dying in the glass, I thought it improved. Maybe just from getting a bit warmer.
I just thought it was... for me that would be one that I'd like to have quite cold.
I'd have it colder.
Yeah.
I see, this is the cask fan in me, but I quite liked it as it warmed up. I felt it got spicier. I liked it more.
A little bit of news this week. We wasn't going to do news, but we kind of felt as though we had to, because there was
some news.
There was an announcement today that kind of we were expecting at some point, but maybe not this soon.
This wasn't what we were expecting either.
No, so a few weeks ago we were talking about Carlsberg were looking for a UK craft brewery to invest in.
Yeah.
And we all had bets.
Yeah. Then a few people on Twitter said their versions as well.
Yeah.
And no one came up with this one, did they?
No. So Carlsberg essentially invest in a joint venture with Brooklyn Brewery,
which is as big a surprise anyway.
Yeah, into London Fields.
Yes.
Who don't have the best track record.
Well, they no longer brew at London Fields, for starters.
There's some questionable practice.
Yes.
There. Is this simply Carlsberg buying a brand?
Yeah, the question is why. I don't understand the why.
You had a really good tweet that you found about this, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, the hilarious one
encapsulated it perfectly.
Carlsberg appear to have bought the craft brewery equivalent of a petrol station bouquet of flowers. And that was from Sam Parker at Sam Parker.
At Sam Parker's nailed that.
He did say,
spot on.
For the benefit of balance, I would also like to point out that many petrol stations offer fine floral selections, which make fine gifts. So I love that bit as well. But
yeah.
I thought that sounded. I don't understand. I don't understand the Brooklyn. Where does Carlsberg and Brooklyn tie up?
I don't understand.
That's the most interesting part of this.
Connection is. So I think we need to come back to this next week with maybe a little bit more insight. So that's the one piece of news for this week, and we will come back to that next week, because I think we are going to see more about that come out over the next week or so. It's time to get into a little bit of this.
Opinions, 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 Hopinions.
Our go-to beers are part of your drinking regime was our question. We had yes or no. And how did it go, Steve?
Why was it our question though? While I'm finding the results.
Finding the results.
I'm going to deflect back to you. Why did we choose this question this week?
Well, I did a couple of blog posts. One was just listing. Literally, I listed my top 10 beers that I'd had quantity-wise on Untapped over the 4 years, because obviously before May 2013 I didn't drink beer.
And that got a lot of traction, didn't it, that post?
And then I sort of backed it up with the like adding a bit of a flavour to why those beers were my go-to beers. Bit more of a background to it. So, for example, Fuller's London Pride is second on my list. I love London Pride on cask, but the reason why it's second on the list is because it's the house beer at work. So when we have any sort of event, London Pride's available. So that was one of the mitigating reasons why it was up there.
I love that at your work
we have a house beer. Strictly speaking, we have 2 house beers, but Speckled Hen is the other one. So you can see why London Pride is the one on my list.
And we've already established that we're not allowed to talk about that brewery.
No, we're not allowed to. So yeah, I did a bit of a bit more behind the headlines, effectively. So give a bit more feedback to it. And I did actually. It was probably the most traction and comments that I got from a blog post in the 2 years I've been blogging, where we had people talking about either their go-to beers or saying, well, we don't really have a go-to beer. There's so many beers to go to these days. Why would I go to one beer all the time?
But a lot of people also did their top 10s as well.
Yeah.
So I know I did
in
response to it. I went into my Untapped and had a look at my top 10. And I was surprised.
Yeah.
Particularly by one of the entrants on that top 10.
Which was Hobgoblin?
It was Hobgoblin, which I think featured at number 7. Which I'm currently trying to do my best to get.
No, you're trying to get out of the top 10.
Out of the top 10 now.
Does that mean you're checking in all your beers now? Just to get it out of the top 10?
No, I'm still not checking in all of my beers, because I think we mentioned earlier that I had 3 pints of the lager before we started recording tonight. I've only checked one of them in because I don't feel the need to check the other.
How do you expect to get Hobgoblin outside of your top 10 if you're not checking in all your beers?
I think what was Hobgoblin 22 check-ins. I don't think I'm ever going to drink 22 beers, 22 the Whitstable Bay lager 22 times. So
you never know.
You never know, and I should maybe start checking every beer in. But
you never know.
But yeah, so I was certainly one of those that responded with my 10.
Yeah,
and I know there was a lot of others as well.
Yeah, and I do check in every beer. So if I've had a beer, I still check it in. I might not comment, or if it's really good, I might say it's top form, banging, smashable, whatever the appropriate phrase might be. But I check in every beer religiously. That's the OCD bit. But I did get some really good feedback, and we talked about it over the last couple of months about can we do a show around it? What's your go-to beers? Is there a go-to beer? Do people even have them? And that's where the question came from. We thought we'd keep it simple.
Yeah.
Because everyone likes the yes, no. We didn't even
give that in the last few weeks.
We didn't even give the dodgy third option.
No.
Didn't even give the what the fuck option. So how did it go, Steve?
322 votes. 70% in favour of yes, 30% in favour of no. So quite clearly, most of our listeners, people that interact with us, are in favour of having a go-to beer as part of their drinking regime.
Yeah, and so what's your version of a go-to beer then, Steve? Is it a particular beer? Is it a style?
Mine is, I suppose, the beer that's always in the fridge. The beer that I will always, if I walk into a bar and it's on, I will drink that first over something new. Or if we take the example of last month's bottle share, where Cannonball appeared on the keg line, it was pretty much all I wanted to drink.
That's all you did drink?
And that's all I did drink, because the beers that everybody else bought were appalling.
Yeah, so I had 2 go-to beers that night. I had Citra at the start.
Yeah.
From Oakham, and then I had Cannonball at the end.
But for me, I suppose it's a combination of beers that are readily available, and it's just that beer that you want to open your fridge and have it be there and reach for, maybe before you start getting into some of the interesting stuff.
You see, that's similar to me, but that's when I'm out. I don't think I have a go-to beer at home. It's more going to a pub I know, and I'll go for, especially referencing back to what John said earlier, I'm a bit of a cask boy at heart anyway, and cask features quite heavy in my go-to beer range.
And you're not going to get that home, are you?
Yeah, I don't get cask. You can't replicate cask beer in a bottle, and even if you take it away from a pub, it's not the same. Best cask beer is when it's in a pub, looked after, served well, the right conditions, everything else.
Which probably explains why Ghost Ship is at the top of your list.
Yep. Yeah, and that's actually gone up since the last time I did have a quick look. But yeah, so for me, I'll go for the cask beer, and then I will still look at the other beers. I think one of the end of season shows, we went to my local, and both started on Go Ship, and I then went to Timmy Taylor's Landlords.
Yeah,
You stayed on Go Ship.
Yeah.
Because Timmy
Because we felt as though we needed 4 pints before we started recording.
With beer, yes. Everyone loves it when we do that. But I'm a big fan of Landlord as well. That is definitely one of my beer. I don't get it very often, so when I see it, I will literally go to it and have it. So yeah, for me, my go-to is generally cask, and then I think about what else might be on.
So that's really interesting, because I am, if I go into a bar that's got cask and keg lines, I will always look at the keg lines first.
Yeah, we're very different like that.
But that's just because I like a fizzy beer. I like a beer that's cold and fizzy and is going to do things for my taste buds, where I don't always believe the cask does that for me.
I think well dispensed, well looked after, good cask. Sonoma, for example.
Yeah.
Go Ship. We'll do that.
But this is turning into a cask versus keg debate,
Yeah,
which isn't what
You see, for me, this is a question of just preference. But I will note that, you know, I've lived in London since 2010, and I've always been from the south. I'm from Kent, as we talked about earlier. I just do think that, and this is beyond the sparkler debate, cask beer is generally poorly served in London.
You're not the first person to say that.
Generally. Which is not to say that there aren't lots of places you can get perfectly served cask in London. But for a city of this size, you would expect more. And you go to somewhere like Manchester or York, Leeds, Sheffield, and the quality of cask conditioned beer, the cellar temperature, the condition in the pint that you're getting is just generally better.
Can't really disagree with any of that, to be honest. John, go-to beers for you. Is there such a thing for you?
I was really taken actually with someone who tweeted at you as a result of your survey, your poll. So Mark at Million Bevs, who said, I used to be all about that something new when in the pub, but now will opt for the safer, proven good option, so tired of shit beer.
I'm so with him on that.
Now I live, as we've mentioned ad nauseam, I live in London, and the number of new breweries I'm barely able to keep up with. I've definitely, as I said earlier, created a number of, I've got a list in my head of breweries that are my go-to, not so much go-to beers, but go-to breweries. The breweries I trust.
Yeah, I can get that as well. I understand that.
And, were I up north, maybe it would be Timmy Taylor, Mallinson's, Roosters. Down south here, it would be, I suppose, it would be Beavertown, it would be Colonel, it would be, particularly, for me, my go-to beer, my go-to brewery would be Burning Sky. And without question, Burning Sky Plateau, 3.5%. More often than not served at the Pelt Trader near Cannon Street, which is near my office.
Oh, is that where you were?
Yeah.
Okay, like the Pelt Trader.
And shout out to Mark if he's listening, the manager there. 3.5%, absolutely straw-coloured, clear as day. And I'm a big fan of clarity in beer. I'm not a Merc fan at all. I always think, regardless of what where the Merc has come from. I don't mind a light haze, I should say.
Okay.
But regardless of what the Merc is, just feel that it muddies things and you don't get that strata of the stratification of taste and flavour. But you get a beer like Burning Sky Plateau, 3.5%.
I wasn't expecting that, but you're right.
Super.
I mean,
that is my go-to beer.
To be fair, the Pelt Trader often has Burning Sky Plateau on.
And the other one, I say, go. It's about, because I'm a cask man really at heart. I like modern, sort of forward-looking, for want of a better phrase, but cask beer that's maybe a little bit interesting. Something like Dark Star APA or JHB. Actually, it was first brewed in 96, 98. But they've upped the hopping continuously over the years. Actually, UK hops they use exclusively there, but it's so aromatic. Again, 3.8%, straw-coloured, clear as day. Anything Oakham does, basically. Citra first brewed 2009, but a classic as soon as it hit. And a pub I particularly love in Leytonstone, the North Star. Just every pump has a halo above it. Again, so for me, it's more about go-to breweries and go-to pubs. But yeah, truly, those straw-coloured beers, up to about 4%, New World hopped often, on cask, at the right temperature, with the right condition, with good head retention, which not enough breweries are focused on.
That's a good point. Maybe there's another show there, I think.
Because lacing don't lie.
Yeah.
When you're having a beer and it laces down the glass.
Well, I think what you're saying there lends itself to what somebody else says. That Andy Harbottle at Andy Harbottle said, I have go-to breweries rather than specific beers, e.g. any IPA by Cloudwater is a safe bet, or at Wylam Brewery, swipe right, go-to summer beer.
Now, I used to be a huge Cloudwater fan. Huge. I was a big fan. Big fan. I loved all their session stuff. I thought the IPL, the first iteration of it, was terrific. Their cask beer, especially their bitters, often New World hopped, but really classic style, really balanced, quite malty, quite dark. Fantastic. But all of this Vermont stuff they're doing, all of this New World, everything they do is absolute haze monkey stuff now, and I just can't get on board with it. It just muddies everything up, and I can't taste the layers. I can't taste the layers.
I'm with you on that, and it's no secret.
I know it's horses for courses, but for me,
no.
But
people know that I've kind of
No. I'm sure they don't.
maybe fallen out.
never mention it.
With Cloudwater, and I'm going to say, I had a few of their beers up at the Pilcrow Summer Beer thing at the weekend. The problem for me was, although I had 3 different beers of theirs, they all tasted exactly the same. I couldn't separate the profiles because all I was getting was
Full
juice, soft
oaty,
bitterness,
juicy mouthfeel.
Cloud water.
No, nothing that separated them apart from each other. So
No, I mean, I do agree. I mean, I did like that comment. It's go-to breweries, what John said as well. I mean, so Bearded One said, my go-to beers change all the time, but mostly floats around light beers, low ABV from a core range.
Well, bearded one's spot on. I mean, certainly a man to my heart, or a woman, could be a bearded lady.
It's definitely a man. Definitely a man. Yeah. We can vouch for that bit. But I think that's quite a good example, sort of similar to what me and John were saying about the cask beer, but not dissimilar to what you're saying about going for a cake. It's a style.
I think most of the comments this week have been.
Although when you go for Cannibal, it doesn't really tick the low ABV box, admittedly.
Still sessionable. A lot of the comments this week have been very much on that same sort of theme. But before we dig into those, we are almost finished on our next beer, which we've not even introduced. No. So we could probably just go into that. So this is Shepherd Neame, again from their classic range. This is the India Pale Ale, 6.1%.
And again, I love the branding.
It stands out, doesn't it? Purple and orange.
Yeah, I love the label.
I prefer this a lot, the first of the bottled beers that we had.
Initially, I thought it had too much of that caramel toffee sweetness.
And quite a metallic thing at the very beginning.
But that's gone.
Yeah, I agree.
When you go down, it's
really nice.
Once you get into it, and I remember when I saw this in Tesco, and they only had the one bottle, I said, have you got any more? And they said, yeah, out the back. And I said, can you go and get some, please? And I did actually wait to get 6 of them, because I thought, actually, I'll take a few of these. They were a couple of quid. Yeah. And I thought, okay, I'll try this.
For 500 mils.
I feel it's
a really nice. I think it's actually a really well balanced beer. And again, I love it when breweries, especially the big regionals who've got a good history,
delve a bit,
dip into their history. Why not?
Yeah, this has got some. It feels like it's got some pedigree. I mean, it tastes a bit like Leslie Phillips in a smoking jacket. It's got that sort of hello.
I like
hello. You know, it's got a bit of class. I don't know what it is about their bottled beers, but they often open up a bit sharp. This needed a bit of time, didn't it? To open up.
Yeah, it could almost be like opening a wine and give it a few minutes to just aerate.
But it definitely, it's quite classy a few minutes in.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. We've all almost finished it.
Again. For me, it's not by no means a modern IPA.
No.
Oh God, no.
It's more of a classic style IPA.
But it's a very British IPA.
Classic English IPA.
Yeah. It'd be lovely with a roast dinner, though, wouldn't it?
I think you could drink it. I still think you can actually drink quite a few of these. Once you've got into it, got past the initial bit. I think
it's going to hit you hard tomorrow.
It will, but you could drink a few of them.
Yeah. So coming back to the poll, there were a few beers that came up time and time again.
Didn't they?
So just I suppose kind of a top 5 of beers that were mentioned, top 5, top 6. Northern Monk, Eternal and New World.
Was that just you, Steve?
just over and over.
I've only had their stuff canned, and I've always thought it was okay. But when I compare it to, say, Magic Rock or whatever, I'm just.
Well, I think as we go down this list,
it's got a lot of hype. Northern Monk.
It's going to become quite revealing, these beers, because the next one is Thornbridge Jaipur, the Scottish Brewery Punk, Beavertown's Gamma Ray, and 4 Pure Session IPA. Now, all of those beers are, maybe with the exception of Gamma Ray, are all available in supermarkets.
Yeah.
I think this is what this. So this comes back to how people.
Yeah.
This comes back to how people define go-to, and I think that I'm blessed enough to live, I suppose in London, where I've got, for all that I've mentioned the low density of decent cask pubs compared to the volume of population. There are a lot of places you can go to, for sure. But when I look at someone like Lou on Brews tweeted, and she said, I don't have go-to beers, I have fallbacks like Punk, which I'll take in non-craft bars, but very few other beers that I drink repeatedly. And I think, a lot of people will look at, the go-to thing, and they'll say, I would say the Scottish Brewery, if they've done one thing, they have massively, massively increased the quality of the distress purchase, whether it's in a corner shop or in a supermarket. And that,
I agree with that.
For me, if I'm in a corner shop, especially some of the more enterprising ones, they'll have a few, in Hackney, they'll have a few cans of 5 points, if you're lucky. They'll certainly at least have Punk, and then you've got your Rekorderling and your Kopparberg and all the rubbish, the beers and ciders and God knows what else. But at least they've increased the quality of the distress purchase, and I suspect some people have looked at go-to as fallback. Distress purchase fallback.
I quite like Lou's comment there, because I've definitely gone for Punk in places where I've looked around and think, no, there's nothing else.
It's the Shepherd Neame Double Stout, 5.2%, again from their old recipe books, and in the glass you wouldn't maybe know that this wasn't Guinness.
No, and the labelling is very similar colour.
It is. It's kind of that off-white, kind of almost. I'm gonna go with Kernel-esque
colouring.
Yeah, parcel paper colour. Yeah.
Anyway.
The head. Cheers.
The
head on this is off-white.
Oh, it's a lovely nose.
It's not quite as richly beige as Foreign Extra. The Guinness.
The best Guinness. So I think we all agree with that.
Everyone would agree with that.
It's quite smoky.
Oh, that is smoky.
On that.
It's got smoky. I never noticed that before.
Oh, this is. I'm glad we've done it.
This to warm as well.
I'm glad we've done it in this order. That is smoky as hell.
Right. So while we're drinking this, let's just wrap this up with a couple of final comments. So one of the things that came up time and time again.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go with Bob Maxwell's comment. At Bob Maxwell said, "I'm constantly wanting to try something new, so don't really have go-to beers." Bob wasn't the only person to say that.
No, Bob wasn't, was he?
Also, deep breath. Greg Bullman at Greg Bullman, Andrew Sheldon at Tavare Fan Club, Brett Preston at Breton Beer, 12 Beers at 12_beers, Paul Briley at The Real Brian, and Mr. Walker Porter at Mr. Walker Porter, the Owl Lady at the Owl Lady, and Rintra at Rintra56 also said very, very similar comments to
and Bob and his wife Sarah said the same thing on my blog post when I did it as well.
Yeah.
It's about, there's so many new beers, why would I want to stick to one? I get that completely. I mean, there's definitely a couple more comments I need to read out. This one is purely, to start off with, I'm going to say his name.
It's the best Twitter handle ever.
Yeah, and for anyone who's listened to our opinions on film or knows about it will understand why. So, Bok to the Future at 1.21 gigahop.
Brilliant.
Says, find either beers or my taste change, plus the majority of my top rated are infrequently brewed, although I do have go-to styles.
And again, that's a different variation on the go-to thing.
Yeah.
So we've had go-to beers, go-to breweries, and now we're talking about go-to styles as well. So I am very much
go-to
IPA.
keg, but go-to keg.
Keg or IPA. Keg IPA.
Yeah.
That's what I will go for first and foremost.
Yeah, and I'll probably go for cask, but something light and golden.
Similarly, but then also I've got go-to nostalgia. And that's another thing. So, for example, when I was growing up, and we mentioned this earlier, Harvey's Best was a real eye opener. I always loved London Pride, I still do, but Harvey's Best, so floral, so yeast led, but with the balanced hop. dark and malty.
You still
It
love it?
seems. Oh God, yes. Yeah, and that is a go-to.
So a couple more shout outs. I think I love trying new special brews from Lewis Jackson, Louis _ Jackson, but not always possible due to availability and cost. I have a couple of supermarket go-to beers.
Probably a person after my own heart.
I reckon that's probably very, very similar to yourself there,
I
Steve.
think we often forget that many people in many parts of the country, right, the likeliest thing is that if they want to have some micro beers, oftentimes they have to go to a Wetherspoons. So many different parts of the country.
Thank you.
Listen to the recent podcast.
Listen to many of our shows.
No, I'm a big Spoons. I'm a big Spoons fan.
Probably final comment on this, which we both loved.
I love this one.
This was from Emmanuel's at Emmanuel's. A good beer is like a good tried and tested album that you just know you'll enjoy. Mine's Thornbridge Jaipur every time. I think that just sums up.
Yeah,
this
you could substitute album for film.
So that was interesting.
That sort of wraps it up. I mean, so what do you think of the retro stout?
I'm really enjoying it actually. It's ticking all the boxes for me. It's working as the final beer of the evening.
What was
as
the
well.
percentage again?
It's quite low for a stout. It's 5.2% for a double stout. So I assume that means something
I'd have said
different
6.5.
from an imperial stout.
Yeah, I would have thought.
Gun to the head, I'd have said 6.5.
I would have said it's bigger than 5.2.
I will say this as well. Hat tip to Shepherd Neame for their distribution, because this seems to be a beer that's not only found its way into the supermarkets but many of the corner shops, and I think that again, just raising the level of the distressed purchase.
And 500ml bottles and brown.
Well, I'm a big fan of Oakham for doing the 500ml bottles. Long may they remain that side of the craft.
We were
divide.
very happy with the Green Devil a few weeks ago, weren't we, that we found in Wetherspoons.
Yeah, 500 mils.
500
We'll have
mils
some of that.
Thank you very much.
So that sort of wraps up the go-to beers. But love to hear what anyone else still has to say about it.
Yeah, and we'll put a link in the show notes to your
to the
original
blog, yeah.
post. And if people want to share.
Sure.
If people want to share their top 10 beers with us,
Please do.
Share them. Use the hashtag opinions, and maybe we'll read them out on
Yeah,
next week's show.
especially there's a few goodies in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And those of you who are Doctor Who fans, and one can imagine there is if you do a Venn diagram of beer and Doctor Who, there is an overlap.
Well, we know there's a few.
We know there's an overlap because
the
overlap is here tonight.
Yes.
It's you and me.
2 out of 3.
But at least, if anybody is wanting to listen to a Doctor Who podcast of quality, then they can listen to I'll Explain Later at Explain Later Pod on Twitter. But
you just put your own advert in, why don't you? Don't wait for us to do it.
why do you think I'm here? No, seriously, we will publicise at the time. At an appropriate time, i.e. when it's recorded and about to go out, that Martin's going to come and do a return match where we discuss the pubs of Doctor Who.
Which I have to admit, I'm very much looking forward to.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love that.
Does that mean we have to go to Loch Ness?
Love that thing.
No.
Okay.
But we can do it. We can certainly record it in a pub.
Okay.
Right, I think we probably need to wrap this up tonight because we've been going for a while now. Bitter and Lingonist will return next week because we're just out of time to do it this week. Who has won the Great Big Box of Nothing this week?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm going to give you the runner-up. And the runner-up was me, just to be clear. That was worth it, just for that.
You've seen that Father Ted episode, haven't you? Where they win.
On. we possibly need a steward's inquiry.
It's outrageous.
Hold on,
picture, but
just
you
to be clear,
cannot give yourself.
Sometimes the organiser of the raffle can win, and that's a thing that happens from time to time.
And that's actually a lovely segue because Janice Dunn, one half of the Irish Beer Snobs, said that's a prize's prize if ever I saw one.
Well, I apologise for the accent already.
But you can't.
However, it wasn't the winner.
Was it me?
No.
Oh.
It was one from PlymShaun, Bird in Hand Housted, for his picture of one of the new coffee beers from Siren Craft Brew. Very artistically done, I think, with the coffee beans.
Oh, it's very nice. I like the
that is classy.
glassware that he's put it in as well. Yeah.
And a little bit of spilled coffee on the side and some coffee beans as well.
Siren's a great brewery as well.
Incredible.
So
picture.
I think, I'm looking forward to trying these beers when I get hold of them. But as usual, Sean is getting the beers the day before they're released as ever. And got a picture before I've even had a chance to open one of the bottles. So PlymShaun has won the Big Box of Nothing again.
Well done, Sean, and there'll be a link through to that in the show notes as well. So, if you do want to get involved in the show, if you want to get involved in the Prize This Prize, put a picture on Instagram, use the hashtag Cheers Guys, and if it's not Martin's picture, he might award it to you next week.
Maybe.
If you want to get involved in anything we've spoken about tonight, use the hashtag Opinions, and we will pick you up in next week's Bitter and Lingonist, which will make its triumphant return next week. What are we doing on next week's show? We don't know, do we?
No, we don't.
Right now, we've got a studio show.
It's a studio show, but I've got no idea what we're doing.
We've got no topic.
No.
We've got no beers.
No.
At the moment, we know we're going to be talking about the Carlsberg London Fields thing.
Yeah.
And we know Bitter and Lingonist will be back.
And Prize Is Prize.
Apart from that. And there'll be some opinions.
But we've no idea what about.
But so look forward to next week's show.
It'll be a surprise.
Now, this would have normally been the point at which we would have invited John to have spoken a little bit about his podcast.
But he's done it already.
Seeing as he's already done that, we'll just move straight past.
I'm a professional. It's already been slipped into the main body of the
We'll put a link in the
podcast.
show notes as well.
We will put a link in
That's
the show
very
notes
kind.
to the podcast, and hopefully we can double your listenership again.
No, increase it by 50% at least, because both our listeners are desperate for some company.
Yeah, one of them's already here.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks, gents, for having me along.
You're very welcome, and thank you for getting involved in tonight's show and being so impassioned with your discussion and input as well.
I've got views.
That's what we like.
Yeah, that's what
I've
we're
even
all about.
got Hopinions.
Oh, love it.
Brilliant.
Still on brand.
Still on brand. Just once again to mention the fact we are still running the listener survey. There's a link in the show notes. We still need you to fill that out because it will help us to make the show better. And I think that's about it.
I think that's definitely about it.
For this week, isn't it?
So we'll sup up.
We will.
Cheers.